Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rich, Simple, Human. I'm Lindsey Frances, your host, and I'm here to talk to you about all things behaviour change, performance psychology and sophrology. Today, I'm really looking forward to sharing something that's coming up constantly for my clients as part of our series on the client journey. So please stay tuned if you'd like to find out a little bit more about how to let go and leave well. If you're listening now on a new release, it's coming up to the new school term. We're coming in to September. And September's an interesting time where we mark the change of seasons. We move from summer into autumn and then winter. And of course, if you look around in the natural environment, you will see that the leaves are beginning to shed from the trees. You are beginning to feel a little bit colder, and you might be putting an extra jumper on if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere, and you might be turning the heating up. So we're marking a season of change. And something that I see my clients struggle with an awful lot is letting go. I'm also extremely inspired by a podcast I was recently listening to called The Fight Club by Charlotte Gamble. Charlotte is a fantastic Christian speaker, and she talks a lot about how we don't leave situations, decisions and relationships well. So what can we do about it, and why is this such an important topic for my clients? Well, everybody that I work with comes to me and says they want to change something. And of course, there is nothing wrong here, but we can be in better relationship with ourselves. We can become more aware of who we are and what we really want and what's right for us. There is nothing wrong with us. But sometimes we're distracted and we're not as conscious as we could be. I use the word consciousness quite liberally, and of course, it's not that easy. Consciousness is a state of mind where we become aware of what's going on physically, mentally, emotionally, and relationally. And of course, when we're aware, we can make really conscious choices about how we think, feel, and behave. But the world is busy. Technology is advancing very rapidly, and AI is creating a whole new landscape. Of course, what's that meaning? It means that we're becoming sometimes less conscious because we're moving very quickly and we're not always seeing or feeling what's going on in as much detail. Imagine the times when we all lived in tribes with no data, no communication, and no electricity. Well, things were very different. Time was moving much more slowly. And when we couldn't do things with tech, with electricity, or even lighting and heating, we lived in a very different way. So today, I invite you to slow down. And I invite you to contemplate what it means for you to let go and also leave well. Clients come to me and they are looking for change, they're looking for transformation, they're looking for awareness, self-development, and a deeper relationship with themselves and what they really want. Most of my clients have achieved great things financially and on paper, but that isn't the solution to happiness, of course. What is the solution to happiness? Well, it's finding rich simplicity in every day, a depth, a peace, a pleasure, and a serenity. And we're not talking about dopamine high on a daily basis that we're getting from shopping, success, running, or driving a fast car. We're talking about the daily fulfillment, that daily bread, the joy that we find in the small things, the magic of just looking at the sky, or perhaps really taking time to enjoy a coffee we might have made for ourselves, really slowing down and feeling the granularity of what's happening in our day-to-day lives. That's where fulfillment really lives, not in I want to achieve X, Y, and Z in the next week, month, year, decade. So letting go and leaving well. Well, Charlotte Gamble talks really nicely about why it's so important to leave well. And she actually talks about leaving relationships, and particularly churches well. When we're going to transition, we're moving on, we're doing something else. And she talks about bringing people into our thought process slightly earlier on, rather than letting it becoming a surprise. Oh, by the way, I'm leaving. It becomes more of a gentle conversation about, I'm contemplating this or I'm considering that. This is particularly interesting if you're a parent or a family member and you're going to be contemplating a transition, or perhaps something's happening. The sooner that we can bring out these conversations, not as a fait accompli, but as something that may be happening, the more we can navigate it with security. So knowing that tomorrow won't be as we expected it because we simply can't control it, but knowing that we're equipped for change is far better than pretending that nothing's changing and then all of a sudden something happens. We're very adaptable and we're very resilient. So stay tuned. I'm going to take you through 4 questions to ask yourself about how prepared you are to let go of what's been happening before and leave well, to make space for the new. Clients that I work with come in and I say, in your sophrology practice, I'm expecting journaling, I'm expecting you to do some sophrology practices, and I'm expecting you to do the work. But of course, the problem they have is they don't have the time. How do you make the time? Well, unless you're some magician or wizard and I don't know anything about what you're up to, you simply can't create more time. All you can do is let go of things that no longer serve you. What are you doing that doesn't need doing? What are you doing that's actually not a priority? What are you saying yes and no to? So my first question for you today on today's show is, are you overcommitted? A simple yes or no. If you're overcommitted, now is the time to let go of some of those commitments. And are they commitments that you've made to yourself that you just haven't really thought about, so you're on default? Or are they commitments that you've made to other people? And now is the time to be super brave. Go back and say, I would like to let go. I can give you many, many examples where clients have been involved in clubs, in activities, in serving, and it's become expected. But when they say, I've reconsidered for this season and I will no longer be able to do X, Y, and Z, nothing terrible has happened. You're not letting anybody down. It's perfectly natural to say, my circumstances or my feelings have changed and I would now like to stop. But sometimes we're not brave enough. So let me just ask you, can you remember a time recently when you've said no or stopped something? It's really, really tricky. I spend a lot of time not stopping things because I'm worried about what other people might think. I'm worried that I'm letting people down. I feel guilty. I also had this conversation with another client last week. A relationship had come to an end and they felt terribly guilty in saying it's come to an end. And there was a bit of a dance going on. And when we really dug down into the emotions, they felt guilty for letting somebody down. They're not letting anybody down. They're simply saying, that was then and this is now. No, and I'm moving forwards. So are you overcommitted? Yes or no? And if you are, because I think most of you are, what are you going to do about it? There's a beautiful sophrology practice where we use a head and neck movement to really engage our bodies in that yes-no process. And often what comes up for people in the pheno descriptions are they know exactly what they need to say yes to and exactly what they need to say no to. And then my job, of course, as a coach and as a psychologist is to help them deploy that, to keep them accountable. What is it they're actually saying no to? The next question, do you let go or do you hold on? You can tell when you're doing a practice with a client whether they're holding on, their hands are closed or tightly squeezed, or they're able to really let their hands go. Are you letting go or are you holding on? Right here, right now, what do you think you're doing today? Holding on to something perhaps that you no longer need or no longer serves you? Or are you able to let go? Again, we're coming into September and I'll bring this back to a relationship and a parenting context. What clients are you holding on to that actually you no longer need? What commitments have you made in your business or your work that you no longer need? Are you perhaps working with somebody that the relationship has come to an end or it's run its course or you need to move on? Are you holding on to a relationship, something in your marriage perhaps, or something with your children that you need to now let go of? If you've got teenagers, now is the time to allow them to do a little bit more on their own. But are you holding on to the idea that they must do X, Y, and Z because of a fear of A, B, and C? They must achieve this, they must go here, they must do that. The reality is you can't control it. But is your fear really true? So, are you letting go or are you holding on? I've also been intrigued to find out more about the Mexican practice of the Day of the Dead. This is something I didn't understand, and I've seen it a number of times being celebrated over the years and thought, God, what an awful thing to be doing, celebrating the dead. This seems very wrong to me and not really aligned with my own belief system. And when I actually read more about it, The Mexican Day of the Dead is actually about celebrating what's past in order to move on. And okay, these are specific cultural practices that I'm not claiming to be an expert on. But if you think about that, if you sat down at dinner and said to your friends, I'm really looking forward to letting go of these things, or I'm really keen to celebrate the end of this relationship, it was wonderful and now I'm moving on, or even perhaps with somebody that we've lost, I really want to celebrate their life and just think about what went on before, but I'm beginning to heal from this situation and moving forwards. When we hold our memories fondly, we look at the past with a positive lens. Again, it's a sophrology practice to be able to go back and look at what the purpose and what the pleasure has been. And perhaps even look at situations that we didn't feel did end well, but we've still learnt something. So we don't feel this negative heaviness, but we feel a celebration of learning, experience, and growth through something that was perhaps positive or negative, or we reframe it. So my question to you again is, do you let go or do you hold on? And if you were sitting down and conducting some kind of Day of the Dead celebration, what would you be celebrating the death of? Perhaps projects that have happened at work that you've let go of. Perhaps ideas that were just ideas and didn't come to fruition. We have to have lots of ideas, dreams, hopes, and creative moments, but not all of them become reality. Perhaps taking some time to celebrate the stuff that we've let go of would be a good idea. There's a lot of concepts here about cutting off branches, burning things that we no longer need, sorting, sifting, and letting go. And of course, a good tree doesn't bear bad fruit. We must let go and prune, cut off the bits that we no longer need. You know yourself, if you're a gardener, if you don't do the pruning, your plant won't thrive. And we're the same. We've got to cut bits off in order to flourish. Human flourishing is so crucial to our ability to enjoy our lives and be happy. It's not perfect, but human flourishing is a balancing act. It's about letting go and starting new things. It's about resting and recharging as well as moving forwards. So my third question is, are you in a season or are you in survival? Seasons suggest a grace, a flow, an ebb, understanding what it feels like to transition from summer to autumn, from autumn to winter, from winter to spring, to transition from a season of striving and a season of recovering. Perhaps this is a growth season for you. Perhaps it's a recovery season. Perhaps it's a season just to stay the same. But what does this season look like? Because what doesn't work is a whole year of striving, a whole year of pushing, a whole year of grinding. I see this in founders and CEOs all the time. Push, 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 and it's unsustainable. We know that burnout is on the rise. And burnout really is the loss of passion, and when the demands on us are outweighing the capacity that we have. And of course, we build more capacity by making sure we're dialed into our passions and our values and our purpose, and making sure we're taking enough time to recover and recharge. So are you in seasons or are you in survival? And if you do want to move into a season rather than staying in survival, can you decide what season it is you're moving into? What's this season for? What does from now to Christmas, if you're listening to this in the autumn, look like? What might you be doing? And what are your priorities? These are deep questions. They're difficult questions. And that's why I always suggest people find themselves a coach or a therapist that works in this way. And I use the word coaching and therapy together because it depends who you're seeing. These lines are now very blurred. Goal-orientated coaching is wonderful, and reflective therapy is also wonderful, but it depends on what you need. I've got other podcasts you can listen to about finding the support that's right for you. How do you know what's right for you? Well, you need to know how you want to feel and begin to think about what it is you're looking for. What process do you want to go through? And what resonates? When you speak to somebody, do you want to just turn up for an hour a week and talk and go away? Or do you actually want a toolkit-based approach? Of course, you know I love sophrology and you love the method that I use. And I really believe in legacy beyond wealth. So I'm not going to be talking to you about profitability, but I am going to be talking to you about human flourishing and also the nervous system. really making sure that you're both in parasympathetic and sympathetic, and you are serving yourself by building energy, by recovering, and making sure you've got maximum flexibility, because this is where a lot of the root causes of illness and sickness lie. So, nervous system, super, super important. Again, if you're wearing Whoop or Aura, you know I love the data. So you can use that data to see where you are when you wake up in the morning. Have I been in fight or flight? Am I in survival? Or am I able to be in rest and digest? Which is, of course, where we're able to let go and leave well. My final question for you today is, can you use an ofrenda? Now, ofrenda sounds a bit like agenda, but it's completely the opposite. Ofrenda is a Spanish word for offering, the Spanish word for offering. And it's about creating an altar to let go. We're offering up things that we no longer need. And I'm not talking here about cult rituals, but I am talking about the concept of an ofrenda. What are we offering up to let go of? What are we laying perhaps at the foot of the cross to alleviate? What burdens are we releasing from ourselves? And I know a lot of you, if you're highly successful, will be running agendas, you'll be using all sorts of tools, diaries, project management, planning, scheduling tools, PAs, EAs, home support. There'll be agendas coming out of your ears, to-do lists. You'll be running a very tight schedule, especially if you're managing a family office, you're working with multiple generations, or you're managing many children. I know that you're all running schedules that are colour-coded and highly coordinated. Unless, of course, you're perhaps one of my neurodiverse clients where their brains are working in totally different ways, where we're actually seeking to reduce the friction so you can actually get more done with processes that are in place. But going back to having an ofrenda, how can you create space, and what are you offering up to let go of? So I'm going to invite you just for a moment to think about laying something down. If I asked you just to imagine that you had a very big rucksack on that was full of stuff, things to do, things that you've committed to. If I just invited you to take a moment, take something out and lay it down, what might it be? What comes up straight away? What would you like to offload? Now, of course, if your mind suddenly jumped to a confrontational situation or something you're responsible for that you're not really enjoying but you don't feel you can get rid of, that's where having a conversation with somebody like me can be super helpful. But just take a moment to imagine, what have you taken out of that bag? What have you let go of? There's an absolutely fantastic sophrology exercise called the volcano, where you actually get guided through a visualization and you let go at the top of a volcano, which is awesome. It's an amazing one to guide, and it's great fun to see what comes up. Of course, this is serious work, but it's a really wonderful way of engaging the part of your brain you don't normally access through creativity, by being in that alpha brainwave dream-like state and just seeing what your mind conjures up as you throw it over the edge of the volcano and it evaporates or bursts into flames, never to be seen again. Now, this isn't something you can do with something that you're responsible for, like your child, but it is something that you can do for things that you're not actually responsible for, or things you've picked up along the way that you would like to get rid of. Not everything is your responsibility, because you're not the saviour of the world. You're also not the saviour of anybody else. I'm sure you're serving others and other people are serving you. But remember, fit your own oxygen mask yourself. And as the saying or the line from the Bible goes, love your neighbour as yourself. Now, that suggests you need to love yourself first. So you must prioritise your own needs. What do you actually need? How do you want to feel today? And if what I need is more money and a Ferrari came to mind, can I remind you that it's very important to lead with your feelings and not your plannings? The plans really come at the end of the process. And the process I use on the client journey has a number of steps. We start with a pause. We start with a purpose. So it's pause, presence, power, people, purpose and plans. Purpose and plans are at the end because there's work to be done before you can get there. If my plan was to be, I don't know, buying a house in Timbuktu, the question is, why am I doing that? What do I want to feel? Well, actually, if I want to feel X, Y, and Z, perhaps buying that house in Timbuktu is not the right thing to do. So there's a bit of an unpicking process to be done there. So today, I invite you to think about letting go and leaving well, without guilt, but to encourage a sense of freedom and spaciousness, entering into this new season, letting go, being free, and welcoming in what the universe might have for you. Of course, if you've got extremely high control needs, which I hate to tell you is often a sign of being terribly insecure, please think more carefully about letting go and releasing. What is it you're trying to control that actually has nothing to do with you? Are you trying to control the uncontrollables? Are you trying to control and force something that actually isn't in your circle of control? It might be, of course, in your circle of influence. And as I'm sat here talking to you now, I'm hoping that this might be influencing some of your decision making. But I certainly can't control you, and I certainly can't control what you do. I can try and influence you by sharing my enthusiasm and my own experience of working with clients for years on something that they find incredibly difficult. The client journey is fascinating. It's what motivates me to do the work I do. And for anybody that's listened to any of my other podcasts, especially where I'm being interviewed on other channels, you can find those by just searching for Lindsey Frances, you'll know that the passion that I have about why people do what they do has been burning in my soul since I was able to talk. Why do people do this? Well, why do we? Well, there's many, many reasons. But in my experience, the best way to think about what you want to do is to think about how you want to be. Let's be human beings and not human doings. Let's think about how we want to be today. And today, I would like to be peaceful, serene, and calm. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Does that mean I need to go and buy a Ferrari or a house in Timbuktu? No, I can do that right here, right now, by breathing, being conscious and mindful of what's going on. So until next time, please think about letting go and leaving well, making space in this new season for what's coming, what's already been prepared for you. Because of course, you know the plans he has for you, plans to prosper and not to harm you. So I invite you to really think about letting go and releasing, and whether you want to do more research on the Mexican Day of the Dead, whether you want to think about more of those verses around vines and branches and letting go and pruning, or letting go and holding on. You want to feel the difference through a sophrology practice, please let me know. You can find me on lindseyfrances.co.uk, Lindsey with an E, Frances with an E. You can always find me on Instagram, Human with Lindsey, and LinkedIn, Lindsey Frances. And I'm always really excited to talk to other guests that might want to come on the show and dissect some of these human flourishing issues that we all come across. Have a wonderful week, and please remember, let go and leave well.